The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is a novel by Mark Twain, a pen name for Samuel Langhorne Clemens. It was published in 1876. Get your notepads ready as we will cover in detail the summary, important themes, and symbolism of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Set around 1836 to 1846 in the fictionalized village of St. Petersburg, Missouri, along the Mississippi River, probably based on Mark Twain's childhood hometown named Hannibal. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is from the point of view of an omniscient third-person narrator focalized on the adventures and maturation of Tom Sawyer from childhood to adolescent. Thus, the novel can be termed a Bildungsroman, a picaresque adventure episodes that depict American realism. The novel is a fusion of various genres, such as comedy, satire, and folk narrative, written in a satirical, witty, and nostalgic tone. In the preface, Mark Twain discloses the autobiographical origins of the narrative events. Twain clarifies that the characters in the novel are drawn from individuals he knew during his upbringing 30 or 40 years ago. The odd superstitions portrayed in the novel are also reflective of those held by children and slaves in the West at the period of this story. By asserting that most of the adventures recorded in this book really occurred, one or two were experiences of my own, the rest those of boys who were schoolmates of mine. Huck Finn is drawn from life, Tom Sawyer also, but not from an individual. He is a combination of the characteristics of three boys whom I knew. Twain emphasizes the authenticity of the town's depiction, framing his satire as a commentary on the real world. While the book is primarily targeted at young readers, Twain expresses the hope that adults will find entertainment in it, evoking nostalgia for a time when they once were themselves, and of how they felt and thought and talked, and what queer enterprises they sometimes engaged in. The novel serves as a reminder of the era it depicts, addressing both children and adults in its intended audience. The novel begins with Thomas Sawyer, an orphan, living with his Aunt Polly, younger half-brother Sidney, and cousin Mary. In contrast to the obedient Sid, Tom often faces reprimands from Aunt Polly due to his mischievousness. Preferring not to attend school, he sneaks out at night with his friend Huckleberry Finn, who doesn't attend school and has a drunk father. Despite his aversion to school, Tom is clever and adept at evading punishment, were it not for Sid's tendency to tattletale on him. Aunt Polly penalizes Tom for skipping school by assigning him the task of whitewashing the fence on a Saturday. Employing a clever ruse, Tom persuades other boys to complete the chore for him as a privilege. At school, Tom's brash antics, including chasing, stealing snacks and yelling, garners attention. On the following day, Tom attends Sunday school, where he secures an honorary Bible by swapping the trinkets he obtained from tricking his friends on Saturday for tickets they earned by memorizing scripture. Despite the teacher's awareness of Tom's deceit, he is rewarded, a move calculated to impress Judge Thatcher, who happens to be visiting that day. Judge Thatcher quizzes Tom's biblical knowledge by inquiring about the names of Jesus' first two disciples, to which Tom incorrectly answers David and Goliath. He becomes smitten with Becky Thatcher, the judge's daughter, and, after winning her favor, proposes to get engaged. However, Tom's unintentional revelation of a prior engagement with Amy Lawrence jeopardizes his relationship with Becky, leaving him heartbroken. Even though he offers her an andiron knob as a gift which she rejects. One night, Tom and Huck embark on a midnight adventure to the graveyard, expecting ghosts during a ritual to cure warts. Believing in superstitions, they hide when they hear approaching voices. The voices turn out to be those of Injun Joe, a violent criminal and a Native American discriminated as half-breed, along with Muff Potter, a drunkard, and Dr. Robinson. The trio was engaged in grave robbing. A violent confrontation ensues, leading to Dr. Robinson hitting the drunk Muff Potter with a headboard and making him unconscious. Injun Joe stabs Dr. Robinson to death with a knife. Frightened, Tom and Huck take a blood oath to keep silent about the events. They are unaware of that, and Joe plans to frame Muff for the murder by placing the knife in Potter's hands. The drunk Potter believes that killed the doctor, and Injun Joe orders him to move, now, and don't leave any tracks behind you. Muff Potter is arrested for Dr. Robinson's murder, and Injun Joe takes an oath that Potter killed the doctor while Huck and Tom remain silent. Sid informs Aunt Polly that Tom sneaked out the previous night. At school, Becky dismisses Tom, disregarding his playful antics, leaving him incensed. In response, Tom forms a gang of pirates with Joe, Harper, and Huck, deciding to escape the constraints of normal society by running away to Jackson Island in the Mississippi River's middle. The town supposes the boys drowned, leading to a search for their bodies. Under the cover of night, Tom returns home in St. Petersburg to leave a note for Aunt Polly, only to overhear plans for their funerals. The boys wait until their supposed funeral day, sneak back into town, and surprise the gathering by revealing they are alive. Although they become the envy of their peers, Tom still hasn't regained Becky's affection. Tom takes the blame and punishment for Mr. Dobbin's anatomy book ripped by Becky and thus mends his and Becky's relationship. With summer break, Muff Potter's trial begins, and Tom and Huck, burdened by guilt, wish we could get him out of there. And feel worse when Potter thanks them for being nice to him when they give him gifts through the jail window. During the trial, Tom testifies as a surprise witness, revealing Injun Joe as Dr. Robinson's murderer. Injun Joe flees the courtroom through the second-story window before the trial concludes. Injun Joe goes missing, and Muff Potter is released with the town's apologies. Tom and Huck fear that Injun Joe might seek revenge for being a witness. One day, the two friends search for buried treasure at the old abandoned haunted house on Cardiff Hill. While digging, they are surprised by the arrival of two mysterious men. Hidden upstairs, Tom and Huck realize that one of the men is Injun Joe, disguised as an old deaf and dumb Spaniard. As they eavesdrop, Tom and Huck learn about Injun Joe's plans for a revenge job before fleeing the country. The criminals intend to hide $600 in the haunted house and later retrieve it. However, upon hiding the money, they discover a box of previously concealed treasure, once belonging to a gang of robbers. Opting to stash their loot in number 2 under the cross, the crooks leave the house. Driven by the desire to acquire the treasure, Tom and Huck plan to follow Injun Joe and discover its burial location. Meanwhile, Becky, who had been away, returns to St. Petersburg and hosts a picnic for her friends, leading to an exploration of McDougal's cave, an extensive cavern with secret underground passages. Unbeknownst to the others, Tom and Becky get lost in the cave. Simultaneously, Huck waits outside the Temperance Tavern, suspecting Injun Joe's presence. The boys had, days ago, seen Injun Joe unconscious in the tavern's room without the treasure. Huck's patience pays off when the crooks emerge and head towards the haunted house. Surprisingly, they change course toward the old widow Douglas's house, intending to harm or possibly kill her because her deceased husband had once publicly horsewhipped Injun Joe. Recalling the widow's past kindness, Huck rushes to Welshman named Mr. Jones's house, alerting him to Injun Joe's sinister plans. Mr. Jones and his two sons arrive at the widow's place, thwarting Injun Joe and his partner away before any harm is inflicted. By the next morning, the news of the almost attack on Widow Douglas quickly spreads throughout the town. However, when the word about the missing Tom and Becky circulates, the entire town starts searching for them. In the cave, Tom and Becky are disoriented, with their last candle burnt out and no food, realizing the possibility of starving to death. Tom tries to comfort Becky and continues exploring the cave's passages in the hope of finding a way out. Going down one passageway, he encounters a man and shouts at him. To his surprise, it turns out to be Injun Joe, who, alarmed by Tom's cries and not recognizing his voice, hastily runs away. Tom keeps this incident from Becky to spare her further uneasiness. Finally, Tom discovers a tiny hole, allowing the children to crawl through and escape danger. The safe return of Tom and Becky brings joy to St. Petersburg. Within the next 2 weeks, Judge Thatcher orders the sealing and locking of the cave's door with metal. Tom reveals to the judge that he saw Injun Joe in the cave. Breaking the sealed door, Tom, the judge, and other townspeople find Injun Joe at the cave's entrance, having died from starvation. After Injun Joe's funeral, Tom informs Huck of the treasure's location. Huck, thinking it was lost, eagerly joins Tom in returning to McDougal's cave to search for the money. After recovering the treasure, totaling over $12,000, the boys return to town and are brought to Widow Douglas's house. To express her gratitude for Huck saving her life, the widow plans to give him a permanent home and an education to civilize him. Disappointed, Huck runs away, but Tom convinces him to accept Widow Douglas's offer, declaring Huck's got money and is independently wealthy as Tom presents their newly discovered treasure. The conclusion of the novel highlights that the narrative is essentially the history of a boy. This connection to the preface is evident as the author directly addresses the audience, emphasizing the book's nature as a story and a history. Twain rationalizes the necessity of concluding the tale at this point, indicating the impending transition from a boy's story to that of a man. If the narrative focused on adults, it would invariably culminate in a marriage, signifying the shift from youthful adventures to mature responsibilities. Also, the author notes that most of the characters are alive and are prosperous and happy, hinting at the potential exploration of the younger characters' stories in the future. Although details about their lives are withheld for the time being, Twain entertains the possibility of revisiting and documenting their experiences someday. As Twain declares, someday it may seem worthwhile to take up the story of the younger ones again and see what sort of men and women they turned out to be. Therefore, it will be wisest not to reveal any of that part of their lives at present. Notably, he fulfills this prospect by later penning The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, a work considered one of Twain's most renowned and serving as a companion to the discussed novel. Now let's analyze The Adventures of Tom Sawyer for its most important themes and key ideas. The evolution from boyhood rebellion to mature adulthood is a glittering theme of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Raised by an abusive drunkard father, Huck enjoys an unsupervised life that many village boys in the novel dream of. He skips school, avoids church, smokes freely, dresses as he pleases, and sleeps outdoors. At the novel's beginning, Huck is closer to adulthood, being free from school and adult oversight, unlike Tom, who is under Aunt Polly's care. Despite this, Huck becomes a mentor to Tom, introducing real-world concerns into their games and guiding them away from mere pretense. As the story progresses, the boys shift from pretend activities to real-life challenges, with Huck serving as a voice of caution after witnessing a murder as he prefers hiding to testifying. Huck's decisions, however, reflect the struggle of a boy forced into adult roles prematurely. While Huck resists the civilizing influence of Widow Douglas at the novel's end, Tom attempts to balance civilization and boyhood in their adventures, urging Huck to join his pretend gang of robbers. Tom Sawyer exemplifies the spirit of boyhood rebellion, initiating and organizing childhood pranks and imaginative games. Consistently disappoints the adults around him through rule-breaking, fights, neglected chores, fibbing, skipping school, and pilfering treats. Tom's misdeeds are portrayed by Twain with humor and fondness rather than as morality lectures. His rebellious nature earns admiration from other boys in town who engage in milder mischief. As the story unfolds, Tom's seemingly consequence-free games gradually acquire greater significance, leading himself, Joe Harper, Huck, and Becky Thatcher into increasingly perilous situations. Confronted with difficulties requiring prioritizing others over himself, such as taking Becky's punishment and testifying at Injun Joe's trial, Tom demonstrates growing maturity, capability, and moral compass. His adventures on Jackson's Island and McDougal's Cave serve as symbolic escapes from society, shaping his return to the village with a more adult perspective on community. Despite an initial escape with Joe Harper and Huck to Jackson's Island, Tom realizes the importance of family and society. Lost in the cave with Becky, he grasps the nuances of mature romantic love, valuing genuine care over superficial courtship for personal pride. Although initially viewing Huck as older and wiser, Tom's maturation exceeds Huck's by the novel's end. This growth is obvious in Tom urging Huck to embrace civilization under the Widow Douglas rather than escaping all social conventions. Twain paints a vivid picture of a Southern American village in Missouri and the everyday experiences of ordinary people along the Mississippi River in the mid-19th century. The end of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is written like a romantic saga, as Tom and Huck find treasure in a haunted house, involving the reader in the preference for fantastic tales over pragmatic conclusions. Tom's journey into adulthood involves his connection with stories and adventurous games that romanticize the lives of bandits like pirates, Robin Hood, and robbers. While Huck, having provided himself largely, is more aware of the risks associated with disclosing information about the murder. However, like Tom, he is enthusiastic about the prospect of finding treasure. It is noteworthy that Twain does not imply that childhood playfulness and the pursuit of adventure should be discarded as immature. In contrast, the boys' idealistic and perilous hunt for treasure proves to be immensely advantageous in their real lives. Tom and Huck's reliance on superstitious beliefs is due to their abundance and interpretative flexibility, allowing them to adopt beliefs that suit their current needs selectively. Twain introduces superstition in the graveyard scene, where the boys experiment with a magical wart cure. Superstition parallels the religious practices of St. Petersburg's populace. The boys' obsession with graveyards, magical cures, witches, and ghosts masks the true horror of the circumstances they encounter, that is, grave digging, murder, robbery, starvation, and attempted revenge. Despite the genuine fear of death, the boys navigate these grim events with relative ease, incorporating them into their imaginative, childlike world, suspended between reality and fantasy. Tom uses make-believe as an escape from the mundane routines of daily life in St. Petersburg, reimagining the world for entertainment. This involves play-acting with peers as a gang of pirates, embellishing his achievements, running away from home to Jackson's Island for being supposedly shunned, and collecting superstitious beliefs and tokens to enhance his wild adventures. However, his emotional growth involves learning to distinguish this whimsical fantasy from the gritty reality. Both children and adults in St. Petersburg are prone to imaginative escapism, as seen in the minister's remarkable descriptions of the apocalypse in a church sermon. Superstition and fantasy serve as coping mechanisms, providing people with a way to traverse the bleak reality. Before we end the video, we will discuss the symbolic meanings of the three most significant symbols of the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. The cave serves as a trial that Tom must overcome to progress into maturity. In the ordeal of being lost for several days in McDougal's cave, Tom demonstrates his transition from boyhood to manhood. His behavior in the cave reflects wisdom and resourcefulness as he becomes Becky's protector. The cave becomes a site of physical remoteness and death, with Injun Joe meeting his demise there, resolving the significant threat against Tom and Huck. Moreover, during Tom and Becky's stay in the cave, they genuinely fear the prospect of dying from starvation. Discovering treasure aligns with Tom's whimsical and romantic boyhood imagination. Tom and Huck embark on an adventure hunt in search of buried treasure, representing a promise of a stable future for both of them. Judge Thatcher takes charge of Tom's future, strategically planning his financial prospects. Similarly, Widow Douglas had already made arrangements to care for Huck, but the treasure signifies Huck's potential to lead an independent life in the future. The treasure secures financial stability, extending past their boyhood years into adulthood. It serves as a symbol of Tom's transition into adulthood and Huck's integration into civilized society, symbolizing the boys' heroic endeavors. St. Petersburg serves as a representative example of small-town America during the 19th century and can be seen as a microcosm reflecting the United States or society at large. The village encapsulates all major social institutions on a smaller scale, all of which are subject to Mark Twain's humorous treatment of social realism. The ordeals and pleasures that Tom experiences in the village share a fundamental structure with those that anyone might encounter anywhere. Throughout the novel, Tom undergoes a maturation process, realizing that he must assume a responsible role within this community rather than resist its established customs. While Twain portrays the village as a fundamentally generous support system for its citizens, he employs satire to highlight the hypocrisies and vulnerabilities present in social institutions and societal conventions. Hope you liked our video. Don't forget to subscribe for more.